What's going on, everyone? James Livingston back again, bringing you guys another market breakdown, giving you guys the weekly levels that I'm kind of looking out for here on your favorites, SPY, QQQ, as well as IWM for the ETF side, and then we will also be going into a little bit of the Magnificent Seven as well. So let's get right on into it. So if you watched my last video, you know that we just dropped a couple of bombs on Iran. Not the greatest thing going on right now. A lot of war news happening. I expect a little bit of a downturn in the market, at least momentarily. I'm not sure how long it will actually last, but I do expect the market to essentially, sell off a little bit. It would warrant a little bit of a pullback here. Now let's really quickly zoom on out for the overall time frame. And mainly what I'm trying to look at here is just where we're at on like the monthly. We're coming up on the end of the month here in June. I believe this is our last week in June of trading, if not second to last week. So just kind of shaping up and looking at how the monthly candle is really coming together. We can already see that the monthly candle has swept the prior month's high. So we already created a new high on the month. Now, if we zoom in here on the weekly, we can see here that the weekly, was showing us a little bit of selling pressure towards the end of the week. And then, of course, with this market news, I do expect a little bit more of a gap down. So even more selling pressure. So this monthly candle is starting to shape up like a rejection style. Just something to note, not 100% set in stone, as we're not at the end of the month just yet. But I am keeping in mind that, selling pressure does seem like it's starting to come into the market. Now, if we go in here on the daily time frame, we're above the 20 EMA here. We're holding the overall trend. However, again, with a potential gap down, I could expect this to, break that 20 EMA at least momentarily, pulling back into that high 580s range. Now, that's just overall market analysis there, looking at what could happen. Let's go in here on the 15-minute time frame to try and find some actual levels that we can trade. So if for some reason the market does decide not to sell off for whatever reason, we're looking at potential upside opportunities. I am looking above this area up here in the 595.70s to push back up towards kind of that middle of the day Friday high, which is in the 596 area. Now, once we break that 596, we're likely to start going up towards that pre-market wick, which is about 597.30s, so on and so forth, up to the $600 psychological level. Go ahead and make these levels orange. So I'm going to keep the main break levels as orange, and then I have support levels in blue, therefore after. So as far as for downside, in order to create more downside pressure, we obviously do need to see price action push beneath the low of day or close to the low of day, which I believe at this point would be your 593.30. After 593.30, it looks like we do possibly have a little stop out here at the 591.60 area. Now, again, assuming the market could gap down and create a little bit more selling pressure, the next logical spot for me to look for potential support would be at about 590 psychological. After 590, we do have that 589 area, which was a very hefty resistance for the longest time way back here when we were in consolidation. So I do anticipate that 589s could give us at least a little bit of a relief bounce. Now, if price action does fall beneath all of these levels, I expect that 589 to 590 area could act as temporary resistance before it wants to continue down. But these are essentially my levels right here across. You can see them highlighted in orange and blues. Keep an eye on those ones heading into tomorrow. Now with QQQ, obviously it's going to have a very similar kind of look as SPY, as they do correlate pretty well. So we're just going to go right down to the 15-minute time frame and try and find those specific levels for you guys. So the main levels to the upside at the moment is looking like 528.40s, 528.50. Essentially lining up with where most of the price action was bouncing off of and rejecting during the day there on Friday. Again, we'll make that orange. And then for the bottom side, we are looking at close to that low of day there, looking at about 525.64. 525.60 for the break to the downside. Now, if we do get upside movement, I'm expecting that again, kind of that wick out area that we had in the morning time at about 530.60-ish, a hair over 530 psychological could act as a resistance. And then of course, from there on out, we're looking at heading back towards the high of days, probably about 533. Now, downside wise, if we kind of zoom out here and look back, we can see that the last little bit of support that we had here was sitting in the 523s, right around 524-ish. And then we do have a little bit of a spot down at 522.70 that could potentially have a little bounce. Now, if selling pressure is pretty steep, 522s in general, I think could get touched pretty quickly. That was our kind of longer term area of resistance. 522, 523. So all in all, looking at these levels, this is what you can expect right here. Again, orange ones for the initial break, and then the blue ones I have here for kind of each level thereafter. Now let's touch on IWM real quick. This is the Russell 2000, so essentially the small cap index. So looking out on the kind of weekly time frame here for the Russell, again, I do anticipate this will likely follow in suit with the other ETFs in terms of pulling down a little bit. So I'm going to keep my bias more towards the downside here. On the 15-minute time frame here, looking at strictly levels, just going to give you the main breaks for these next couple. I would be looking at about 209.80 to just about that 210 psychological level. And then we're also looking at that kind of low of day area. I'd actually aim for specifically the low of day on this one, just because there's not really a level in between there that shows me any more support outside of maybe 209. But I think to be safe, low of day break 208.30, 208.50, sorry, should act as a pretty good spot for a breakdown. Now let's move on over to some of these Magnificent Sevens. I'm gonna actually just go over the main ones I think that everyone pays more attention to, which is gonna be Nvidia and Tesla. And then I will have another video coming out specifically going over a little more in depth on some of these other ones and what I expect out of them in the coming days / week. So with Nvidia here, the main levels that I'm looking at, and again, I'm expecting price action to likely follow suit with the market. So anticipating a downside move, but we're gonna give you both sides of the levels here. I'm gonna use the 30-minute time frame. I feel like it kind of smooths out the price action for me. So at this point with Nvidia, it looks like the 144.30 area held as a pretty decent resistance through most of the day. And then for downside, I think you could probably get in on this a little bit sooner in the 143.40s if it offers that, if it doesn't gap down too much. Otherwise, we're looking at that low of day break or just about low of day, 142.70 for that breakdown to the downside. And of course, everyone's favorite stock here with Tesla. I get rid of some of these other levels. You can see Tesla had that big move down, and just like Nvidia, kind of consolidated throughout the day. I am looking at for upside, I'm actually looking at about 324.70-ish, where most of these kind of high wicks touched out and resisted off of. That would be a nice general area I think you could get in for a call or a long position. And then for downside, you can see where a lot of these wicks also came down for support was at this 319.70 there. So about a $5 spread. If you want to be safe with Tesla, you can also just wait for that low of day break, which is down there in the 317.75 area right here. So those are the general looks for all those ETFs, as well as some of these stocks, some of the Magnificent Seven there, with Nvidia, with Tesla. You know, a lot of things, especially with all this war news going on, I do expect that we're going to get a decent little downturn in the market, at least momentarily. I don't know how long it will last, but these are generally the levels I would watch for your calls / puts if you are playing options, or just longs and shorts if you are just, you know, traditionally trading shares or trading positions in these ETFs. So that's it for today, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. Hopefully these levels kind of help you out and help you navigate the initial start of the market there this week. I'm gonna try and do a little midweek recap as well. So be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, if you liked the video, please drop a like, comment down below, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what your thoughts are for the market here heading into the next week or so. And of course, if you're new to the channel, just stopping in, feel free to subscribe. We're going to bring out some more content just like this week in and week out. So have a good rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.